It's a new year, and we have Pokemon with guns.
Valve made $1 billion from CSGO cases last year, data claims.
It's blown up in an unexpected way, which actually makes a lot of sense considering how popular Pokemon is to begin with. A lot of people took problems with this. They took ire.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is understandable.
So we're in.
Yeah, we're back in. I was actually going to just let them know, there's been some changes. Have you noticed that? We're both sitting here. It's 2024. It's nice. It's nice. Yeah.
I am 1 year older now.
He has increased his year of age by 1.
Yes.
I'd be proud of you, but everyone does that.
Yeah, it's kind of...
I'm more proud that you haven't,
It's like an in-between year, too. It's not really
the leap year?
No. It is a leap year.
You mean like it's an odd year for you?
No, I mean like it's just like it's not really an important age.
It just started. You don't know what the year holds.
It's true.
But we know that what we're doing is a little bit different. It's part of the changes we're coming up with. We're really excited about it. We hope you are too. What we're doing is, as the people have been following us, Two Souls has been a show where we do the news and we talk about on the games. All we're doing is we're just going to split those two up and release those at 2 separate times throughout the week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Figure it's a more consistent output of content.
Yeah.
It makes it a little bit easier for us to like format our topics and stuff too.
And it also allows us the ability to dive into some of these topics a little more. Because one thing that we weren't able to really do with the way we had it formatted before was talk about some of these things that are going on in the industry a little bit more in depth. So this should allow us to do that.
Yes.
So with that in mind, we're actually going to have less topics than we normally do. Normally we have about 7 or 8. We're going to have about 3 to 4 depending on the week. And we're going to pick what we think has the greatest impact and then talk about that. So did you want to open this up? This first one?
Yes.
It's big news.
So Valve made $1 billion from CSGO cases last year, data claims. CSGOCaseTracker.com claimed that there are more than 400 million cases that were unboxed in 2023, and the prices on cases has increased 178% through 2023.
Goodness gracious.
Which is a lot.
Yeah.
And, dude, that's, so much money from just cases.
$1 billion.
Because the thing with CSGO is, they have, I was talking with you about this earlier today, funnily enough. Yeah. There's... For those who don't know and aren't, into CSGO and stuff, a lot of games will, create, an economy within the game with stuff like that. This game has, a real-world kind of economy inside of there, and it's with the skins, and then they have a black market, and you can, auction off skins, but, some of these skins will range from, $50, maybe, a couple dollars, to, some on the high end are, thousands of dollars. Yeah. Real money.
Like USD.
Yeah, and that's just so much money from just more cases opening and being bought and stuff like that. So, it's kind of curious just on the whole black market for this thing's gonna kind of shift with that, because that's a lot of cases. And obviously this is also with, I'm sure, coming from also the release of CS2. It's not CSGO anymore. It's CS2.
Yeah.
But it's just a lot. It's a lot more cases, or a lot more skins in the mix, and a lot more knives, a lot more gloves, and all this different stuff. But it's a huge deal, and there's a lot of people that'll get into CSGO without really even getting into the game.
Yeah.
Just because there's this whole gambling, auctioning kind of side of things with CS. And again, you can make a lot of real money. So there's people that'll go in there and open a bunch of cases, or there's websites where you can link your account and mass open a bunch of cases at once. And a lot of people do that, and if they get a knife, then they go sell it, or they auction it off or whatever. And clearly this took a huge this took a huge leap this last year, which is kind of funny, because it's CS is pretty...
It's been around...
CS has been around for a long time, but it's right now is where it's going up in just revenue, I guess, for the keys. Because that's the thing, you can get boxes from just leveling up, but you got to buy a key.
Yeah.
And the keys are like $2, like $2.50 or something like that.
Well, they've gone up. Because the last time that we bought, like, I haven't bought a lot of keys in my time playing Counter-Strike. But I remember them being around that price, and if they've gone up about 178%, it's almost like double an increase. I'm guessing they're around $3-something, $4.
So,
right?
So I think, there's some cases that the keys are like $20
Goodness gracious.
for just the key, dude.
So there's a couple things that
Damn, dude, these prices did go up a lot.
There's a couple of things that get me thinking with this. Is number one, like, and it's something you and I have talked about on the cast before, but just the sheer amount of money that's flowing through this industry nowadays. You know, you've got one game owned by Valve that brought in $1 billion just through these case keys. And granted, we understand that like Counter-Strike's pretty well known, you know, into all the stuff that you just said, but nonetheless, though, it is something that does play into like our third news topic a little bit later on, but there's such a demand and such a push from the people that are making these games to make it some sort of economy in order to continue to bring in revenue, because it becomes that kind of thing where it's like, all right, well, what does it cost us to upkeep this? Like, how do we keep people on our platform? How do we make the most money from them? You know, and this whole games as a service kind of thing. I mean, like Counter-Strike, I mean, if I remember correctly, you don't have to pay to like download that. Not anymore.
It's free to play now.
Yeah, so it's full on free to play, and so
Which
they're
was
hoping.
a smart move with all of this stuff.
Well, it is, yeah.
The game used to be like $20 or something, I think.
It's a changing of the tide, because there's a lot of people that are playing games out of their free to play. You know, with the increase of gamers that are playing games now, there's also been an increase of just free to play games, and I feel like that came alongside a lot of different changes. But I think about like mobile gaming. There's a lot of like that switch that happened with mobile gaming, and then you look at a lot of these free to play services where they're hoping to convert like a season pass, or, you know, in this case, like the cases, like the keys for those. I think about like an Overwatch where they were doing the loot boxes for quite a while, where you'd pay it and it was full on gambling. Which brings me to the second thing that I think about with this is, and it's something that you and I discuss rather frequently off camera, is games have become something different nowadays. They're not what they were before, and that comes with a lot of positives. That also comes with some negatives. And along with the negatives, you know, since it's applicable to this topic, is I think games in general have just gone so much more addictive. And I don't think that that's necessarily like the game developers going like, how do we get people to get addicted to this game? I think they're genuinely trying to make a game that is the most enjoyable, but it just comes with the territory that if you're making something that enjoyable, people are going to want to keep playing it and not stop playing it. And then you throw in something like this case key thing, and that's like straight up gambling, basically. So you're throwing your money at something hoping to get some sort of return, you know, trying to get some sort of skin. Even if it's someone that wants to hold on to the skin, it's nonetheless like a gamble. And I just find it interesting, this like that play between those two things that is happening.
I mean, dude, there's like lawsuits with like that CSGO gambling. It was literally called gambling, like the CSGO gambling website.
With
T Martin and then some other YouTuber.
Yes.
But yeah, like it's just so much money running through this industry, and like Colin Moriarty talked about this, where he's like, you know, he's like, as big as it looks, he's like, me being in the industry for as long as I have, he's like, I can tell you, like, it's very tight knit with like the people pulling the strings and like doing stuff. And so for me, I'm like, I don't necessarily have like a thought on that in particular, but it's just interesting to think about when you see like numbers like this, because it's like, dude, we've been talking about this, I think, for the last few podcasts at this point, but it's like, dude, the game industry is so profitable, and there's so much money coming in, and then you have like this like tight knit, smaller kind of like group of people that are like running all of this stuff, you know, or like doing the journalism and stuff like that. But it's very interesting. It's interesting where games are at, and yeah, they're in a. It's not like what it used to be back in the day, where it's like you buy a game and you get the whole game and everything in it, and every extra that they have in the game is in the game. You can get it with the game itself somehow.
And you're only getting a few games a year.
Yeah, and then that's the game you play for the next like year or so. like you and I notice it like since we've been doing this podcast and stuff like that in particular, where it's like you look at review like or release schedules and it's like every week there's like a big title, and then throughout every week there's like a ton of little indie games that like, you know, some get to see the light of day, some don't.
It can be quite the rat race if you allow it to. You know?
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, think it's just like in the last year we got, technically not the last year because Tekken's coming out like this next week, I think. But dude, just within the last like year of like time,
12 months,
we've gotten like 3 of like the biggest fighting game franchises to make like their next releases like happen.
Yeah.
Like, we got Mortal Kombat 1, we got Street Fighter 6, we got Tekken 8. And these are like really big, I mean Mortal Kombat I think the least, but like these are really big releases for these franchises. Like if you're in the fighting game community and all that, like you kind of like know like Street Fighter 5 didn't really do too well on launch. 4 did amazing. 4 is like the reason why we still have Mortal Kombat the way we do. And needless to say, without getting into all that too much, these releases are just really big, and it's like it's a lot of money coming through all of them. And
there's a lot of hooks to get hooked on.
yeah, and to your point of the addiction and stuff, like I think I agree. I don't think you need to like set out to make an addicting game in order to like reach that same goal.
Yeah.
But like but yeah, like I think a lot of these devs are not necessarily focusing on like, at least for like a Fortnite and stuff like that, they are also not necessarily like aiming to make like an evocative game or anything, or have like a story that makes you feel something, obviously. Like their goal, I would assume, is like, we want people to play the most.
Yeah.
Or we want them
they want to
to
convert them into these sales.
Yeah, and then it becomes like buying skins and stuff. I think aside from CS:GO, it's like Fortnite's done it the best.
Yeah.
And I think that shows just with like sales of skins and stuff like that. But like CS:GO's on, like, in my head, they've always been on like this whole other level with that stuff because of the black market. Because you can't like sell skins on Fortnite.
Yeah.
But you can on CS:GO. And so it's like when you talk about like a rare skin, they like hold different weight compared to like a Fortnite.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, all the more reason to not get into that skin game, you know what I'm saying? There's plenty of skin in the game, but you don't want to waste your money
I
on that.
play my own skin game. Like certain guns I'll buy skins for.
That's good. Yeah, but watch out, that's how they get you. So, moving on, we have Pal World. This is the Pokemons with guns. We're talking guns here. This game's crazy. It actually became the 6th Steam game to hit 1 million concurrent players since the launch of Steam. That's nuts.
Damn, dude.
That's nuts. And so, for those of you that don't know, Pal World, it's a game that is basically Pokemon with guns, where you get to craft and you get to build and you get to, use Pokemons with guns. So there's a lot of people playing this. And it's blown up in an unexpected way, which actually makes a lot of sense considering how popular Pokemon is to begin with. You got a lot of people that are like, well, last 10 years of Pokemon hasn't been too hot. Maybe Pal World will bring it home, So over the first 40 hours since its release, it sold over 3 million copies, which is insane.
It's a lot, dude.
Then concurrent players, this is not on Steam, this is on Epic Games, hit 700,000 concurrent players, which actually prompted an emergency 1 a.m. meeting for all the higher-ups to remove limits for the online services. Because there was limits in place in order to make sure
mitigate servers.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, we gotta remove, there's actually people playing this. So very interesting.
We didn't expect that.
They're like, we never expected Pokemon with guns. I'm like, dude, come on, Pokemon guns, But what do you call it? Along with that, along with its booming success, has been there's always someone in the crowd, and they're like, this is Pokemon with guns. You stole it. So they're like, that Pokemon looks like this. This Pal World over here looks like that Pokemon.
The ones I saw were completely different elements.
So I've
which
scrolled through.
I'll say is kind of cheeky, but
I've scrolled through some of the comparisons, and some of them are like, okay, dude, come on. Like, it's like there was one that was like I forget what the ferret looking Pokemon was from Pokemon, but there was one that was just, it was a cylindrical in shape and a completely different color, completely different scheme going on. And people are like, you stole that Pokemon, and it's like, not really. Let's not forget also a lot of these Pokemon, they were based off of real life animals too, so there is that. But there were a couple that were, a little closer, a little more one-on-one. And there is one in particular where it was like a 3D model of like this little like wolf looking kind of like Pokemon. And then the Power World equivalent was literally like someone overlaid the two 3D models, and it was it was almost completely identical apart from some
they changed the colors.
Thing. Yeah, and so we see that, but unless there's been proof that Power World has taken actual models, or they've actually taken stuff and lifted it and incorporated that was from Pokemon, I don't really see this being an issue. If it's an issue, we'll know, because Nintendo's quite litigious, and they will send the cease and desist. They've got a team of lawyers. They'll take care of that and they'll squash it. So that's something that's going on, and a lot of people are going like, to add to their anecdotal evidence, they're going, well, Craftopia, this other game that this developer had made, looks like Breath of the Wild with multiplayer.
The game was called what?
Craftopia.
Craftopia.
Yeah, and so they're going, so they've done it before. They're like, and then there's this other game that was called...
They're just like copying all of
Yeah, and there's this other game called Nevergrave that like basically looks like Hollow Knight. And so
these are all from one dev?
This is all from the same dev. And then people are making further accusations going like maybe they're using AI in order to do these sorts of copying and renderings.
Spoofs.
Yeah, because there's a game that the developer had made called like AI, I forgot what it was called, but it was basically about you like fighting against an AI or something like that. And so people are using this all as evidence to go like, hey, they're clearly lifting this, and they're, unfortunately, as it normally tends to go with these kinds of things, a lot of the developers are receiving death threats.
Yeah, it's too much.
It's like, come on, guys. I mean, like,
there's already like lawyers probably hitting them up and dealing with all this.
The Pokemon already have the guns. Like, what more do we? What more bloodshed do we need? Like, do we really? Got
I'm like as you're talking,
she's got 9 guns.
I'm just looking up like all their other games and like photos, dude. Some of them are like, all right, like
every so often you see an element.
And then there's some of them like this Eevee one. I'm like, okay, that's just like color swapped, guys.
Yeah, so like, but hey, you know what? Like,
dude,
we'll see.
No one's mentioned this. You can get some big guns in this game.
Yeah,
there's like a. Like, dude, this is... Fuck, what was that Pokemon's name? Electabuzz?
Mm.
This Electabuzz is carrying a friggin' minigun, dude.
That's one that's usually in the promotionals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then we start getting people accusing them of stealing guns from Call of Duty.
they stole models for freaking Call of Duty and then Pokemon.
That's AC1, right? The ACR, right? Goodness gracious. So
the game is so different from what I thought it was. Because they showed it and like, I mean, I guess I don't understand why I thought it was any different, but they showed it and I was like, oh, this is Pokemon with guns, right? Like from all the trailers.
Correct.
And then when the game came out, I'm like, wait, there's farming and building and it's just like a survival game.
Yeah.
With Pokemon. With guns.
Yeah, they're really digging this one. So, I don't know. I'm going to keep my eye out on it. I don't know if I'm going to actually play it. I know it's on Games Pass.
So when you ball your Pokemon or your pal. Do the guns go inside of there, or do the guns stay out? Because that's kind of inconvenient.
I would say that the guns go inside. That's what makes more sense. There's a little...
It seems inconvenient if you have to hold the gun.
Yeah.
Then you throw your pal out and you got to give him the gun too.
What if you have a you have a pal that can carry a gun that you cannot carry yourself? Inconvenient.
Furthermore, you gotta lose the gun.
If the pal can go into the pocket world with said gun, then can you also have him carry other things that you otherwise wouldn't want to carry when you're traveling? Just a thought. You know, you have like a whole
You
week's of
just
rations
you just
in one
hand
of your
you hand your
Pokeballs.
pal all the evidence of your crimes, and then you like put them back in the bowl.
What we're saying is there's a lot of ideas that are left on the table here for you guys.
The left on the table, maybe that's DLC.
Maybe it's DLC.
Maybe that's DLC, or you pay for this game, right? This isn't one of those free to plays. No, it has sales. It's DLC. It's DLC.
You're paying for it, or you're paying for a subscription to play it. Which brings us to our final topic. So, our Ubisoft executive CEO basically said that, quote, gamers need to get comfortable not owning their games for their subscriptions to take off, end quote.
He's like, you want better games than your subscriptions? Just sell me a soul.
Yeah, he's like,
That's all it takes.
listen, so long as you're okay with not owning the game, which you should be, frankly, I mean, we're giving you so much value, then your subscription's not going to get any better. A lot of people took problems with this. They took ire.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is understandable. And Swen Vinke, so I believe I'm pronouncing his name correctly, the Larian Studio CEO, this is the studio, for those of you who are listening, that did Baldur's Gate, he responded back in a series of tweets, basically saying that content should and will always be king, and a future where subscription models rule will be one that we don't want. So I picked out a couple quotes here because he's going to say it better than I can. But one of them he goes is, subscription-based models will always end up being cost-benefit analysis exercises intended to maximize profit. He also said that there's nothing wrong with that, but it may not become a monopoly of subscription services. He goes, we're already dependent on a select group of digital distribution platforms, and discoverability is brutal. Should these platforms all switch to subscription, it'll become savage. And then he ended it by saying, in such a world, by definition, the preference of the subscription service will determine what games get made. Trust me, you really don't want that.
Yeah, I just think about like Netflix,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, you know what it's like. We all know what it's like when you're like, what the hell is this? And it's like recently added, and you're like, recently added? When did they even work on this?
A week later, it's getting removed.
David Finch worked on this, or Fincher?
Yeah.
David Fincher? Is it Fincher? Fincher. Okay. David Fincher.
David Finch?
You worked on this, and then you click on it, and you're like, oh, that was a good movie, right? But you never heard about it until then, and I'm like, I think about it from like, I think it's different for like, you know, if you're making like film or like shows and stuff like that, but like, it must suck, like, not getting any recognition throughout all like marketing, because they do marketing for these things, but it's like through Netflix, and it's like you usually just kind of like skip over it or breeze past it or whatever until it like catches your eye. And I'm like, dude, like, can you imagine games being like that? You just go to like Games Pass and you're like, what the hell is this game, dude? And it's like Ken Levine's new magnum opus.
Yeah.
And
that
it's
would
just
be
like, Ken Levine worked
so
on this,
sad.
and it's like, because, and this goes for movies too, and shows and stuff, like, depending how they catch, but it's like, there is like something to the whole build-up to a release, and I feel like if it gets to the subscription point, it's going to be like Netflix, where there's like no build-up, it just shows up, and you're like, what's beef? And then you watch that show, and you're like, oh, it's like really
Yeah,
good.
that was a fantastic
That
show.
was like really, really good.
But it was called Beef.
But it
So
was
like,
called
how was I like
Beef.
supposed to know that?
Yeah, it's yeah, dude. Like like I don't. Yeah, I agree with him. I don't want that.
So and this is why.
This goes back to the whole CS:GO conversation.
Yeah, so
too.
I think that in general, again, I think we can all agree, those of us that are here, but also our listeners who agree with us, you would agree, and I think we could all get on the same page that there's a whole attention issue happening just in general, and that's happening from a lot of different things, but it is
happening from everything right now.
it really does come down to like our phones, it comes down to social media, it comes down to even the Netflix, like the way that you mentioned where you're like the Netflix like scrolling and
Yeah, they're
all
like,
that.
it's easier to not pay for marketing and just have it show up for you.
So back to the example you
on
gave.
this one tray that catches everyone's eyes.
Back to the example that you gave of like, okay, I bought this one game, right? And you would play that game, you'd read the manual, you would enjoy it. When you sat down to go and boot up your N64 or your SNES or whatever it is, you only had the games you had to pick from.
And you had to blow them
And you had to like
before you could play
you
them.
shouldn't do that. That's actually not helpful for it. But you had to like pick one of those, and so that paradigm of choice of having all these different choices of like I can play that, I can play that, I can play that, didn't like paralyze you. You would go like, well, I mean, I'm either playing, Quest 64 or I'm gonna play, Banjo-Kazooie. And so you play Banjo-Kazooie and you enjoy it because you're like none the wiser. Nowadays, it's like you boot up a game system, the first thing it's telling you is like you got to sign up for a subscription. And you sign up for it and it's like, all right, now get access to this whole classics catalog. And you start going through all these different games, just downloading, trying to find like the one that's going to meet.
Dude, you're never doing that.
We did this yesterday. You did it. I watched.
I was doing that yesterday on PlayStation.
And what game do you end up like landing on where you're like, man, this is a lot of fun. I'm going to keep playing this game. Like, dude,
for me, it was Armored Core.
It is.
New one.
It is something that is a problem.
Yeah.
Just in general, where people are going to go play something that's already like, you got a lot of choices, more choices than you ever have. Now you have a subscription service, and you've got all these different things to pick from. How do you know which one is like the one to play? Because you like growing up, you'd play a game that wasn't even like a masterpiece, and you would enjoy it
for what it was.
Yeah. And now you're thinking like, but there's probably something better I could have clicked on.
Because there's so much coming out, dude.
And now it's not just PlayStation Plus, it's not just Games Pass, but it's like Ubisoft Connect.
Yeah.
And it's like Nintendo's got their Nintendo Switch Online, which honestly, like, I'm not really.
I feel like the most reasonable.
Because they have their own IPs that they're mainly.
They have their own IPs, but they're mainly just doing like emulation.
And dude, Ubisoft is one of those studios where I'm gonna plant the seed for our listeners, but I'm like, Ubisoft is one of those studios, one of those companies where I'm like, I think you guys there's as it is with most companies and most organizations,
there's plenty of Assassin's Creed.
There's plenty of people who are like good-hearted there to like do the art, to like make the best product.
Yeah.
And then at the top you've got people that are going like, it needs to like people want to play more. And like you got to make the open world bigger, and you got to add more points to go to.
It's like, but why? They're like, look at the graphs.
Yeah, like look at little Johnny Appleseed walked in here, and then Sally, whatever her last name is, and we like tested them, and they're new gamers, and they got bored, and they're like, you got to do something to keep them here, because then otherwise, like, we can't pay for your food.
Yeah, because back in the day, it's like if you didn't know how to play a game, and that was like all you had, you'd keep going back to it. Yeah. After a while, and then you'd learn how to play it.
Yeah.
But nowadays, it's like there's so many new gamers that are really just going through that like new gamer process of like you've got to like get your thumbs to do what they need to do. Like it just takes time, But instead, it's like no, make every game feel the same.
Yeah.
And just make it bigger and longer so they can play that game for longer.
Yeah.
And a lot of games are pretty like we've talked about this too, where it's like it feels like we're kind of starting to come out of that a little bit, but for a little while there, like games were like pretty stale, dude.
Pretty handholdy, and there's a lot of the waypoints, and I'm not saying that any
that's why
one
like Breath
of these,
the Wild did so well.
I'm not saying that any one of these parts make it unenjoyable or take from the experience, but like the sum of its parts produces an end product that is. I mean, I see a lot of these open world games. I see a lot of these like Assassin's Creeds, and there's other ones, but Assassin's Creed's like one of the most. I would say
Horizon's another one.
Horizon, and that's a hard one for a lot of people to hear. I think Horizon, for all that it does well, it overloads the senses. And not for any real good reason in my eyes. Again, I played a lot of the first one, and I played a lot of the second one.
Yeah, me too. It feels...
There's
so many cool designs in that game, but overall, like, I end up feeling like the game just feels messy.
Yeah.
It feels kind of messy. It feels, like, over-cluttered. And some people like this, but for me, I'm like... There's so many games trying to go so big that, like, playing Forbidden West was just, like, another one, but it's like, I'm just trying to go from, like, point A to point B so I can, like, start this friggin' mission. And on my way over there, like, there's, like, a guy getting freaking, like, there's some kids asking me to, like, help rescue their mom. Then there's, like, a guy asking me to forage some berries. Then there's, like, and it's, like, none of them felt like it's a cool idea and concept and on paper, but like in actuality playing it, I'm like, dude, like these little like side quests that you have me doing, for me at least, were like not. It was an extra thing to do, but there wasn't really like character or like the world there to like expand my knowledge or make it feel substantial. Like it just felt like extra stuff to do, more buttons to press.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just want to go forward with the story because the story's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and then you circle back around to when you've got this Ubisoft executive saying, and it's like, okay, so then a future where the subscription services are being pushed, and then you're going, okay, if that game doesn't sell, then you can't make that game. Okay, what happens with Netflix? Okay, they'll put a show. Okay, it'll not gain enough traction based off of the amount of money they invested in it, and then they'll cancel the future seasons. Like this happened with Shadow and Bone.
Didn't this happen with? Isn't Witcher canceled also?
Witcher, I can't speak to that one.
Or no, they're working on the next season with a different actor as well.
Yeah, and they'll cycle through a lot of bodies of work in order to find something that's going to hit, so that people can go and subscribe and be subscribed for longer, like a Stranger Things or something,
like the Santa Clarita Diet. With with Drew Barrymore.
Like beef. So what's Ubisoft's beef?
So okay, so I was thinking about that, and because for me, I'm like, why is Ubisoft saying this out of all of them? And the thing that gets to my head is, I'm like, the reason why it goes to my head is because of like what they're working on for this thing and like how big it is. But I'm like, dude, like, what are you trying to like set up as like a foundation business wise for like Beyond Good and Evil 2? Because if you get so deep in the subscription stuff, like, dude, that game's supposed to be massive. You guys could like block off stuff and then like,
we've talked about
like, because for me, like, I see that as a big play space of like monetization for them.
Well, and like we've talked about it before on some SOAR content, but I remember telling you where I'm like, this is something. What I think they're doing with that is they're trying to build out the next generation of open world. So that way they can use that to do all of the IPs that do make money. And it is going to be a monetization. Everything with Ubisoft is, and it's
sad.
And it's like, okay, well, like AI is the enemy of artists. And I'm like, but what about publishers like a Ubisoft? Okay. And they're like, oh, well, we let Prince of Persia get made, that new one. And I'm like, yeah, and look at how well it did for that. Like, art is a risk, okay? And the sad part of it is that when you're dealing with a certain level, and this is just a reality of business, but when you're at a certain level, it does become a business. And so we'll be keeping our eyes on this Ubisoft development. We'll see how things continue to go. But at the end of the day, as Colin Moriarty usually says the second time we reference him, just vote with your wallet.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you don't like what Ubisoft's doing,
don't buy it.
Don't buy it. Don't subscribe. I know I'm not going to.
Yeah, no.
Okay, I'm not here to play every game that's coming out and to try to get a taste for everything. Like, no, I'm looking to discuss things that I think are going to push the medium forward, and I think that are going to help not only the developers to have more agency to create what is important, but also for players to be able to have things to play that are important, that aren't going to consume their lives. A game should not be this thing that you only do.
It's things that are going to give you a good experience, or also alongside that, like, push the art form.
Yes.
You know? Because it's like, especially with Ubisoft, it's really sad because it's like, speaking of Beyond Good and Evil, if anyone listening hasn't played the original, like, go play it. The game still holds up. It's so freaking charming. It's a really fun, like, great experience. Like, the characters are so cool. And it's like, that's what Ubisoft had more of in the past. And it's like, nowadays they're kind of like a shell of what they used to be. You just have like Assassin's Creed's coming out and Far Cry's coming out and all their other spin-offs of those franchises. Because that's like mainly what they do.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, but
anyway.
Yeah.
That's just two guys, two souls talking about
that's
this.
just two souls. That's just two opinions.
Yeah, so this is our news. And we'll catch you on the next time.
Yes.
Have a good one.